we are now going to take a survey of the various types of digesting or digestive strategies we have been exploring as we have covered details of different groups of animals. And we're going to do this survey, we're going to do this journey through concepts we have already explored, thinking about the 4 stages of feeding. The 4 stages of feeding will be number 1, ingestion, taking in the food. Number 2 is going to be digestion, which is going to be breaking down food into smaller pieces. This could be done mechanically. For example, the churning action of the stomach is some mechanical form of digestion. Also, teeth can help cut food into smaller pieces. That's another example of digestion. But digestion is going to be done also largely from a chemical point of view using enzymes, which work like tools that are breaking the bonds that will convert a larger macromolecule into smaller molecules. Next comes absorption, when the nutrients obtained from food are broken down into smaller molecules, and they can be absorbed with structures like gut or intestines. And in the end, anything that is not assimilated or used and came in as food after all the digestion, what is left is going to be wastes. And we're going to be looking at elimination or excretion. So let's take a look at what we've seen so far. The first group of animals we studied in this class was the sponges. And you will recall that sponges, we call them primitive animals, not to be mean. They're primitive in the sense they're real simple. They do have bodies made of many cells, but their cells are not arranged into tissues. Consequently, no tissues, no organs, and no organ systems. So how do they accomplish something like digestion? And again, this is a review, a refreshing on what we've learned before. Remember that sponges are going to be filter feeders. So they're going to be benefiting from very small particles of food. Sometimes it's like pieces of decaying bodies of things that died in the ocean that are already in the process of decomposition. That's what comes along with water through the incurrent canals of a sponge. Those water with particles are going to be moving eventually into radial canals, and the radial canals are usually going to be lined with these cells we see right here. These are the choanocytes, and you're familiar with them. Choanocytes are going to be lining also the spongocoel, the place where water comes into the sponge body and it's collected before being sent out. And so what happens with choanocytes? This is how sponges can accomplish the process of nutrition. Choanocytes, remember that they can capture food particles with the help of phagocytosis, which means cell eating. So a portion of the membrane can fold inwards, forming a pocket like a vesicle, which is brought in as a food vacuole. And eventually, there's going to be enzymes that are going to be also in a vesicle. When a food vacuole and a vesicle with enzymes fuse, then digestion takes place. And then these molecules that are a result of digestion can be used by the cell, or they can be packaged into vesicles that can be shared with other cells in the body of the sponge. Remember that we have these cells called amoebocytes, which can help with the distribution. Anything that is not used or digested, cells can also discard those wastes, and that is going to be through the process of exocytosis. Metabolic wastes like CO2 will go through the plasma membrane that goes into the water that is collected in the spongocoel and eventually goes out through the osculum of the sponge. So that's the simplest feeding and digestive strategy we can find in animals. Next, we studied the simplest eumetazoans. The simplest eumetazoans, animals with true tissues, are things like cnidarians and the ctenophores, the comb jellies, and these animals are going to conduct extracellular digestion. Let me go back one slide again and tell you what sponges do, because the digestion is inside of cells. We call this intracellular intracellular digestion. Intra means within, inside. Cellular, well, the cell, right? So sponges do intracellular digestion because the only way they can break down food particles is inside of cells. But cnidarians are going to do extracellular digestion. Extra means outside, beyond. What? The cell. Outside or beyond the cell, this is where food is going to be broken down. So let's think about the four processes of feeding. So first is going to be ingestion, and that is going to be through a mouth. Some cnidarians have a permanent mouth. Others, like Hydra you see here, they need to tear an opening where the mouth forms, and then something like a small crustacean like Daphnia you see here will be brought in. Into where? There's going to be the gastrovascular cavity. That's where step 2 takes place, digestion. So ingestion through the mouth. Number 2, digestion in the gastrovascular cavity. And here there's going to be an enzymatic action. If we look at this illustration here, we can see that cells can produce enzymes into vesicles. Those vesicles dump those enzymes at once through the process of exocytosis. And digestion will allow for smaller food particles to be brought in, also through the process of endocytosis, engulfing maybe a portion of fluid with some of those pre-digested particles. And so that's called pinocytosis, by the way. Then materials that are not used, they can also be discarded through exocytosis. And any waste, any part of the body of this Daphnia that was not consumed, along with other metabolic wastes, are going to go out through the mouth. That's the nature of the gastrovascular cavity. So, because there's only one opening where food comes in, it is also said that the anus is the same as the mouth. That is going to be where wastes are going to be excreted. Quick review: ingestion through the mouth, digestion into the gastrovascular cavity, absorption, cells that are lining the gastrovascular cavity are going to be taking in those nutrients, and excretion is going to collect, waste will be collected in the gastrovascular cavity before it goes out through the mouth. Extracellular digestion will be present in other animals as well. So when you look at more complex animals, those that have bilateral symmetry, you're going to be seeing in most of them a complete digestive system, a digestive system that is also described as open, because there's going to be an entrance for food to be ingested, and at the opposite end of the animal, there's going to be an exit opening called the anus. So with something like nematodes, segmented worms, like the one you see over here, an earthworm, something like arthropods, you will see that complete digestive system. With birds and all of the other tetrapods, there's going to be the same type of design. And so what can we say about the 4 steps of feeding? So ingestion will happen through the mouth. Number 2, digestion. Some of these animals, like a grasshopper, is going to have chewing mandibles, and those are going to be helping with mechanical digestion. Mechanical digestion can also happen with the worm. Right here, there's a pouch called the gizzard, which is a muscular structure, and contractions can help further break down food and mix it with digestive enzymes that have been already released. Look at the bird. Birds are going to have a crop where food is first accumulated. Birds don't have teeth, so they can't do much mechanical digestion with their mouth. They cannot chew things. But after the stomach pours digestive enzymes and some mechanical breakdown happens, there comes a gizzard. And the gizzard is going to be a place where birds often have small little objects like stones, and those are used for grinding, mechanically breaking down the seeds or worms or whatever else a bird has consumed. So the absorption is going to be taking place along the intestine. And if you look at these animals, the ones with bilateral symmetry and an open digestive system, is that there is going to be an extended intestine, an extended tract for the absorption of nutrients. And the last step, excretion, is going to be taking place through the anus. There are a couple of different strategies here. In the case of worms, it's like a one continuous alimentary or feeding canal. In the case of birds, There's going to be some variations. For example, the intestine ends at a special compartment called the cloaca. That is where also the reproductive system meets with the excretory system, and the anus will be eventually where wastes are going to be ultimately discarded. And in the case of arthropods and insects, we can also see structures like we mentioned before. There's a crop for keeping food, storing it until later it is passed through uh, structures that work in the breaking down of food through enzymes and eventually absorption and ultimately excretion. The most complex of all of the digestive systems you'll find in animals is going to be, of course, the mammals. And for mammalian digestion, there is another presentation I've prepared for you. But here we go again. Step number one, ingestion. There's going to be a mouth. Several mammals are going to have well-developed teeth. There are a couple of exceptions, of course, but teeth can help with the breaking down of food. That's mechanical digestion. The esophagus connects the mouth with the stomach, where chemical digestion with enzymes will take place. Notice all of these accessory glands that will be helpful also with the process of digestion. Then there's going to be a tract for absorption, the small intestine. The large intestine is largely for recycling water, retaining water, so that water is not wasted. And ultimately, there's going to be an anus as well. But as I said before, some details of mammalian digestive systems are explained in another presentation. So I'm going to leave it here for right now. And I hope you continue enjoying learning about animal nutrition and the strategies animals use to obtain the energy they need and the nutrients that are going to help them build strong bodies.